The wind carried dust like old regret across the dry bones of Black Hollow, a place with too many empty homes and not enough hope. The year was 1865, and the Civil War had drained the land of its sons. The ones who came back didn't stay long, and the ones who didn't, well, they haunted everything. The saloon's paint had peeled off in strips like old parchment. The church bell hadn't rung in months. And out past the brittle fence line, where the chaparral cracked under its own weight, a single rider cut a tired silhouette against the dying sun. He wasn't much to look at. Just another drifter with sunburnt skin, a weather-beaten coat, and a stallion that limped more than it trotted. Dust hung on him like a second skin. His face was half-shadowed by the brim of a low-slung hat, the kind worn by men who'd seen things and didn't speak of them. A rifle was slung behind his saddle, tied down with twine and a strip of faded blue uniform. His eyes didn't move much, but when they did, they missed nothing. He passed the old Cooper place. Roof half caved, window panes knocked out. Nothing but silence and sun-bleached wood. A boy used to live there, used to wave at passing riders. Now there was just a shovel stuck in the ground out front, a crude cross beside it, and silence. The rider didn't stop. At the edge of town, where prairie turned stubborn and fenced, a small house leaned into the earth like it was apologizing for standing. The porch sagged in the middle. One shutter was missing, but smoke curled from the chimney and the sound of hammering echoed from a back. Clara Morrow didn't look up when the rider dismounted. Her dress was dirt-streaked, sleeves rolled to her elbows, and a line of sweat darkened her collar. She swung the hammer hard into the fence post, jaw clenched, eyes narrowed at the work like it had insulted her. He waited a moment. She didn't look his way. He cleared his throat. "I was told you needed a ranch hand." She didn't startle. Just set the hammer down, slow and quiet, like drawing a pistol. "Who told you that?" she asked, still not turning. "Old man at the mercantile. Said a widow on the ridge was running out of hands and daylight. That got her." She turned then. Her face was sharp-featured, worn, but strong in the way of women who'd learned to bury their softness. Her eyes flicked up and down him, weighing everything, boots to badge scar to calloused hands. "How long you passing through?" she asked. "Long as I'm needed." Clara studied him, then glanced at the house. Something behind the curtain moved. "Got a name?" she said. "Brady." "Last name?" He shook his head. "That is the last name." She narrowed her eyes, and something like recognition stirred, but didn't settle. "Well, Brady," she said, "I can't pay more than $1 a week, and room's the barn. I've slept in worse." "I'm not offering worse. I'm offering hard work and quiet." He nodded once. "Fine by me." Then a door creaked. Light footsteps. A squeal of delight. "Pa!" A toddler came barreling out the front door barefoot, a mop of golden curls bouncing, his arms wide and fast and full of joy. Clara's eyes went wide, too slow to stop him. The boy ran straight for Brady and wrapped around his leg like he belonged there. Brady froze. Not a twitch in his shoulders. The child grinned up at him, toothy and sure. "You came back," he said. Clara's voice cracked. "Danny, no. He's not who you think." The boy blinked, looking between them, confused but still smiling. Brady gently bent down, unwound the boy from his leg, and placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Howdy," he said softly. "What's your name, little man?" "Danny," the boy said proudly. "Your pa." Brady looked up at Clara. She didn't speak, just stood stiff, arms at her sides like she wanted to run and fight at the same time. "He don't have one," she said finally. "Not anymore." Brady let out a slow breath. "All right." The boy stepped back, unsure now. "Are you mad?" "No," Brady said. "Just surprised." Clara walked over, scooped Danny up, and cradled him close, her voice low. "He's just a worker, sweetheart. He ain't staying to—" Danny laid his head on her shoulder, still watching Brady with eyes too old for his face. Brady turned back to the horse and untied his satchel. "I'll start with the corral." Clara didn't answer, but she watched him long after he'd disappeared around the barn. By sundown, he'd mended the gate, stacked the loose rails, and watered the horse. Clara brought out a tin plate with beans and cornbread and set it on a stump without a word. She stood there a second longer than she meant to, then turned and walked back to house. That night, the barn creaked with the wind. Brady laid on the hay, staring at the beams above him, every nerve on edge. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote howled. Then another. He sat up, listening. No footsteps, no voices, just the night. He eased his revolver from his saddlebag and laid it beside him. The next morning, before first light, Clara was already outside drawing water. Brady joined her without a word, taking the bucket from her hands. She didn't stop him. "You always rise this early?" she asked, pouring beans into a pot. "Only when I got things worth doing." She didn't smile, but her shoulders relaxed a little. Mid-morning, the riders came. 3 of them. Big men. Hard eyes. Spurs that jangled like warning bells. They didn't come slow. Dust rose in their wake, like a funeral veil. Brady spotted them from the hill while mending a fence and slid down fast, boots cutting lines in the dirt. "Trouble?" Clara asked as he reached the porch. "They ain't here to sell flour." She stepped back inside, came out with a Winchester, and cocked it without flinching. Danny peered out the window. The men pulled up, grinning with too many teeth. "Howdy, miss," the lead one said, tipping his hat. "Heard you got yourself a new helper. Thought we'd say hello." Clara didn't lower the rifle. "Say quick. You still sitting on that north pasture? The one without a deed. Same one my husband bled for." The second man spat into the dirt. "Dead men don't keep land." Brady stepped forward. "She said it's hers." The lead rider looked him over. "And who the hell are you?" "Name's Brady." "Well, Brady, we were just explaining the facts. Ain't personal." Brady nodded. Then, fast as breath, he drew his pistol and shot the man's hat clean off his head. The silence afterward was heavier than the shot. "Next one goes in your leg," Brady said. "Next one after that don't." The riders didn't move. The man whose hat was now a smoking memory clutched at his scalp, then snarled. "This ain't over," he hissed. "Sure feels over to me," Brady replied. The men turned their horses and rode out. Fast, Clara lowered her rifle, her hands shaking only slightly. Brady holstered his gun. "You didn't have to do that," she said. He shrugged. Seemed like the neighborly thing. That night, he stayed on the porch long after dark. Clara brought out a blanket. "I don't know who you are," she said, "but I know what you did." He didn't look at her. "Doesn't change much." She hesitated. "Why help us?" He looked out at the fence line, barely visible in the moonlight. "'Cause someone's gotta." She turned, ready to go back inside, but paused. "He's gonna ask again," she said. Brady finally looked up. "Ask what?" "If you're his pa." He nodded slowly, jaw working. "What do you say?" Brady looked at the stars, thought about smoke, thought about graves, thought about the child who didn't hesitate. "I'll say I'm still thinking about it." In the house, Danny lay curled under a quilt, clutching a wooden toy horse with one leg missing. Outside, the wind carried dust and silence through Black Hollow, but on that small patch of tired land, something else stirred, something like a beginning. And far off, beyond the hills, the riders who'd ridden off didn't plan to stay gone for long. The land was worth money, and a widow with a toddler and a stranger with a haunted look in his eyes, they didn't scare easily, but they would. Or so they thought. Brady rose before the sun. The barn was cold, the straw beneath him damp, with night sweat and morning chill. He sat for a while in the dark, listening to the quiet sounds of ranch life, with creaking wind shifting through gaps in the boards, a horse snorting softly nearby. He wasn't used to quiet like this. Usually, it meant something bad was coming. He stepped out into the blue-gray light and found the boy, already up, sitting on the porch with his boots on the wrong feet, and a tin cup of milk in his lap. "You don't sleep much," Danny said. Brady raised an eyebrow. "You neither." The boy grinned and kicked his heels lightly against the porch boards. "Mama says sleeps for when chores are done, but she never says when they're done." Brady gave a low chuckle and ruffled the boy's hair. "Sounds about right." He moved toward the corral where the east fence still sagged. His hands worked without needing his mind, muscle memory taking over. His thoughts were elsewhere, mostly back in Texas, where fields once caught fire from cannon sparks and bodies lay under flags, blue or gray, and didn't care much which. By the time Clara stepped out with a coffee pot and rifle slung across her back, the sun had begun to peel away the cold. She saw him lifting a new beam onto the posts and stopped. "Watched? You don't ask many questions," she said. Brady didn't turn. "Folks answer more when you don't." She poured him a cup of coffee, her fingers brushing his as she handed it over. He took it, sipped, and said nothing. "Danny's taken to you. He's a good kid. He don't remember his real pa died in a raid. Shot trying to hold off 2 men with 1 bullet left." Brady nodded slowly. "That bullet do its job?" "Split 1 man's throat. Other one didn't stick around to see if he had a second." Silence stretched, thick and warm. "I married a man who never looked over his shoulder," Clara said. "You look every 5 minutes." "Then we would not have made a good match," Brady said, setting the cup down and returning to the post. But Clara didn't walk away. She leaned against the fence, crossing her arms. "What did you do before this? Before the war or after?" She paused. "Before. I built houses. In Tennessee. Small ones. Just big enough for dreams that didn't last." "Did you lose someone?" He looked at her then, eyes colder than the wind. "Everyone." And that was that. The next few days passed in a rhythm unfamiliar to Brady. Work, food, the boys' laughter, Clara's humming, and silence thick with questions neither of them asked. He taught Danny how to hold a hammer, how to tell a fresh track from an old one, how to saddle a horse without spooking it. Clara watched all of it with a guarded softness, like she didn't want to believe in it, but couldn't help hoping. One afternoon, Danny brought him a carved horse made of pine. Crooked legs, but proud. "I made it for you," the boy said. "You can keep it in the barn." Brady stared at the toy for a long time, then nodded. "Thanks, partner." That night, the wind changed. Brady stepped outside and caught a scent, smoke, faint but wrong. He followed it past the well, around the edge of the barn, and stopped cold. A curl of flame licked up from a hay bale stacked under the eaves. Dry. Planted. Burning too fast. "Clara," he shouted, kicking the bale away and stomping hard. She came out rifle ready, Danny behind her clutching a blanket. "Get water." Brady yelled. Together they doused the flames. Smoke stung their eyes and ash floated like black snow. Clara's hands trembled, but her aim didn't waver. "Someone set this," Brady said when it was over. "I've got no cattle worth stealing," she spat. "No, but you got land worth taking." She cursed under her breath. "I knew they'd come back." Brady looked toward the dark hills, eyes narrowing. "I'll follow the tracks." "You'll wait," she said. "It's night. That's when they move." She grabbed his sleeve. "You could die." He didn't answer. He saddled his horse with only his rifle and his knife. No lantern. No sound. Clara stood in the barn door, the child in her arms silent, watching. "Don't do anything stupid," she said. "I don't have to. They already did." He vanished into the dark. The woods east of the ridge were thick with tangled scrub and shadows deep enough to bury a man. Brady moved like a ghost, tracking boot prints and broken twigs. A twig snapped to his left. He stilled, listened, breath close. 2 voices. Fern didn't scare her. "Should have torched the damn house. They got that new hand. He's fast. Won't matter if he's dead." Brady crept closer, crouched low behind a cluster of rocks. 2 men sat by a low fire, rifles slung, whiskey passing between them. One was the man whose hat he'd shot off. Brady waited, then moved. A crunch, deliberate. Both men stood, rifles raised. "Who's there?" Brady stepped into the firelight, one gun drawn, calm as dawn. "You boys lost." The one on the right went for his rifle, too slow. Brady shot him clean in the shoulder. He dropped, screaming. The other hesitated. "Don't," Brady said. "I didn't light it," the man stammered. "Wasn't my idea." Brady stepped closer, pistol raised. "But you stayed." The man bolted. Brady didn't chase. He knelt beside the wounded one, checked the wound. Clean through, not fatal. He stripped the man of weapons and poured the whiskey out over his leg. "This land's hers," Brady said. "Next time you ride back, you'll limp." Then he walked. He returned near dawn, blood on his shirt and soot still clinging to his skin. Clara stood on the porch, rifle over her shoulder. "Should I ask?" she said. "Two men. One ran. One didn't. Alive? Mostly." She stepped aside, wordless invitation. He walked past her into the kitchen. She poured coffee with both hands, shaking slightly. He sat, stretched his shoulders, and closed his eyes. "You want me to leave?" he asked. "No," she said. "I want you to stay." The words sat between them like a third person. That night, she tended the wound on his arm, where a branch had scraped deep during the ride back. Danny stood nearby holding the lantern. "You're brave," the boy whispered. Brady looked at him, then at Clara. "Not brave," he said, "just tired of running." She dabbed the cut with a wet cloth. "Then rest." For the first time in years, he did. But peace never stayed long in Black Hollow. 2 days passed. Clara returned from town, face pale and tight. She dropped a folded notice on the table. "Land grant's been challenged. They're claiming Robert forged it." Brady read it once. "How long?" 30 days. If we don't prove otherwise, it reverts to county. Then sold." He leaned back. "They're tightening the rope. Worse than that. Sheriff said your name came up. Poster out of Abilene." Brady didn't blink. "Still out there." "He said he burned it. Doesn't mean others will." She sat across from him, the space between them heavy. "You kill a man?" she asked. "Yes." "Why?" "Because he was killing everyone else." Clara's voice dropped. "You think if you keep moving, you'll outrun it?" "No," he said. "I just hoped it'd forget me." Danny ran and then, laughing, and tackled Brady's leg. Brady picked him up and held him close, rough hands cradling something small and trusting. "You want to run again?" Clara said quietly. "Now's the time." Brady looked at the child, then back at her. "Maybe this time I stay." Out the window, dusk painted the fields in gold. But just beyond, in the woods, something watched. The burned man. The one who'd run. And this time he wasn't alone. Trouble wasn't done with them yet. But the man who'd once ridden from fire and loss had stopped running. Because somewhere in this dust-choked place, a boy had looked up and called him Pa, and for the first time, the name didn't feel like a lie. ChatGPT said. Dawn broke slow over the ridge, the kind of pale gold that promised peace but seldom kept it. Brady sat on the porch with a mug of black coffee, watching the sky shift above the hills like a living bruise. His rifle leaned against the wall beside him, always within reach. Danny was chasing a chicken across the front yard, giggling and barefoot, while Clara hung, wet linens on the line, the hem of her skirt whipping in the breeze. It was too quiet. Brady knew that kind of quiet. It was the kind that came right before something tore loose. "You're thinking too loud again," Clara said without turning. "Hard not to," he answered, sipping. "Wind's blowing east." That's how it blew the night they tried to burn the barn. They ain't come back since. They will. She pulled a sheet taut and pinned it. "You always think they will?" "I don't think," he said. "I know." She turned to face him then. The morning light softened her, made her look younger, less worn. "You said you weren't running anymore." "I'm not." "Then stop looking for ghosts." He didn't respond, just watched Danny crouch down and cluck at the hens like he was one of them. Clara came and sat beside him, resting her hands in her lap. "He's different since you got here. Laughs more. Sleeps better." Brady stared into the yard, eyes unreadable. "He called me Pa again yesterday." "I know." "What do I do with that?" Clara looked down at her hands. "You don't have to be anything you're not." "That's the thing," he said. "I ain't sure anymore what I am." A gust of wind kicked dust up from the road. Brady stiffened. Something in the air changed. The birds quieted. The wind dropped flat. He stood slowly, coffee set aside. "Danny," he called, "get inside." The boy froze, sensing the tension. "Now, son." Danny ran to the door, Clara ushering him in, her fingers tightening around the rifle leaning in the corner. Brady walked to the edge of the porch, eyes locked on the ridgeline. It started as a shimmer in the heat. Then, slowly, 5 riders crested the hill, shadows on horseback, guns at their sides. The man in the middle wore a black hat and a bandage on one arm. "I told you it wasn't over," Brady muttered. Clara joined him. What do you want to do? We can't outrun them. I wasn't asking that. Brady looked at her. Her hands didn't shake this time. Her eyes were steady. The rifle was already loaded. They want the land, he said, and they want it gone. Then we give em neither. He nodded once, then stepped off the porch and walked toward the barn. Inside, he pulled out the Henry rifle, checked the chamber, grabbed extra rounds. He slung the old saddlebag over his shoulder, inside it a flask, ammunition, and one photograph, a woman with his eyes and a boy that never got the chance to call him Pa. When he stepped outside again, the riders were closer. Clara had stationed herself at the window. Danny was beneath the table, eyes wide, clutching the wooden horse Brady had carved for him out of scrap. The first shot cracked the sky. A warning. Nothing more. Brady raised the rifle and returned one of his own, into the dirt, inches from the lead rider's boots. That changed the conversation. The riders scattered, flanking wide. One headed behind the barn. Brady cursed under his breath and sprinted for the fence. He caught the rider off guard, knocked him from his horse with a clean shot to the shoulder. The horse bucked and ran. Another rider fired from the hill, grazing Brady's sleeve. He dove behind the well, bullets snapping against the stones. Inside the house, Clara ducked and returned fire through the broken shutter. One man fell off his mount, writhing. Another ducked behind the chicken coop, pinned by her fire. Then silence. Brady emerged slowly, scanning. A shout, Clara's voice, cut through the calm. Brady! He ran, heart in his throat. He burst through the door and saw it. The man with the bandage inside, arm around Clara's throat, revolver pressed to her temple. Drop it, the man growled. Brady didn't. I said. I heard you. Danny sobbed under the table. Brady's voice came low and steady. You so sure you'll get out of here if you do that? The man's eyes darted. You kill her, you die, Brady said. Today. Here. The man hesitated. You're bluffing that? Brady's hand didn't shake. Try me. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Clara drove her elbow into the man's ribs. He flinched just enough. Brady fired. One shot. Clean. Between the eyes. The body crumpled before it hit the floor. Clara caught herself on the wall, breath ragged. Brady rushed to her, helped her sit, his hands gentle but firm. You hurt? She shook her head. Danny crawled out, eyes full of fear and wonder. Mama, he whispered. Brady pulled him close, held him tight. It's over, he said. It wasn't. Not quite. Outside, a single rider still waited, hands high. One of the younger ones, barely 20, tears in his eyes, horse trembling beneath him. Brady stepped onto the porch, gun raised. The kid dropped his pistol in the dirt. I didn't want this, he said. They made me. Brady stared, then lowered the rifle. Go. The boy didn't wait. He galloped west, fast and grateful. Sheriff Owens arrived that evening, summoned by the smoke and the noise. He dismounted slow, eyes tracking everybody, every bullet hole. You all right? He asked Clara. She nodded. We will be. He turned to Brady. You got more lives than a rattler. Brady said nothing. The sheriff sighed. That wanted notice from Abilene's still floating around. Men like you don't just get to vanish. I'm not vanishing, Brady said. I can't ignore it forever. I'm not a skin, you two. I'll come in when the time's right. The sheriff studied him, then gave a slow nod. I saw what you did here. That counts for something. He climbed back into the saddle. Watch your back. As the sun dipped low, Clara and Brady sat on the porch, shoulders just touching. You don't have to stay, she said softly. Brady stared at the boy playing in the dust with his carved horse. I know. You've done more than most would. He reached into his coat and pulled out a worn photograph, creased, faded. He handed it to her. My wife. And our son. Lost them both. Fever took the boy, while I was at war. She followed 6 weeks later. Clara ran her finger over the faces. I'm sorry. I thought if I kept moving, I wouldn't feel it. She looked at him. Did it work? He shook his head. But it kept me alive. Why stop now? He nodded toward Danny. Because someone finally asked me to. Danny looked up from his game, then, dirt on his cheeks and joy in his eyes. Pa, come play. Brady stood slowly, something heavy falling off his shoulders. "I'll be there in a second." He turned to Clara. "If I stay, it ain't just for him." She smiled just a little. "I know." He walked down into the yard, scooped Danny into the air, and spun him once. The child shrieked with laughter. Inside the house, the wind caught the curtain and let it billow like a breath of new life. The land was still scarred. The house was still leaning, but the walls held, and the people inside them had decided to stand. That night, with Danny asleep between them and the stars thick as silver, dust above the prairie, Clara whispered, "You reckon the past ever stops chasin'?" Brady answered without opening his eyes. "Only when you stop running, Dot." The wind had shifted again, carrying the sharp scent of ash from somewhere far off. Brady stood alone in the corral, boots sunk in dry dust, hands working instinctively at the leather cinch of a restless chestnut. The horizon simmered with heat and secrets, and Brady knew, like a splinter under the skin, that this piece they'd stitched together was unraveling. Inside the house, Clara packed bread into a cloth. She moved briskly, but her eyes kept darting toward the door. Danny sat at the table, tracing lines in his porridge with a spoon, solemn and silent, as if he too felt something closing in. Brady ducked under the low beam and stepped inside. "Sheriff Owens came by," he said. Clara's hands stilled. "When?" "Just now. Said the Upton boys are headed this way. All three of them." She drew a breath. "Let it out slow. They want the land," he said, "but mostly they want me." Clara didn't ask what for. She knew enough. She crossed the room and looked him square in the eye. "Then let's give them something worth fighting for." He studied her, something rising in his chest he didn't dare name. "No running this time," she added. "No," Brady said. "Not this time." They moved like clockwork. Brady gathered ammo, double-checked the trap rig behind the barn door. Clara filled canteens, lit lanterns, laid kindling by the porch in case they needed firelight or smoke cover. Danny stayed close, clinging to his carved wooden horse. He hadn't spoken all morning. Brady knelt beside him. "You remember what I told you?" The boy nodded. "If something happens, you run to the creek and hide where we showed you. Don't come out for nobody till we come get you." The boy's lip trembled, but he nodded again. "You'll come." Brady pulled him into a fierce hug. "I promise, son." Son. The word hung between them, heavier than iron, truer than blood. By the time the sun tilted west, the sky had turned a brutal shade of copper. Then came the distant drumming of hooves, measured, heavy, deliberate. Not a gang. A statement. 3 riders crested the ridge just before sunset. Upton blood. Big men, hard-eyed. Every one of them soaked in the arrogance of inheritance. All 3 bore the same brand on their saddles, a stag's skull burned into the leather. Their father had ruled 3 counties with a noose and a banker's smile, and though he'd long since rotted in the ground, his boys carried the same rot in their bones. Brady stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand, Clara just behind him, steady as ever. "Evenin'," called the oldest, Silas Upton. His voice carried like a snake in tall grass. "We heard there's a squatter settin' up shop where our father broke horses." Brady didn't move. "Ain't your land no more." Silas leaned on his saddle horn. "You sayin' that like it means something that it does to me." The youngest Upton laughed, dry and sharp. "Well, that's real heartwarmin'. Maybe we'll carve it on your stone." "3 of you," Claire called out. "Don't seem like fair odds." Silas chuckled. "Ain't never been much for fair." That's when Brady fired. Not at them. At the lantern by the barn door. It shattered, flame leaping instantly into the line of oil he'd trickled out an hour earlier. Fire roared to life, drawing the Upton's horses into a rear and panic. Brady was already moving, rolling off the porch and into the shadows, rifle ready. Clara fired from the kitchen window, hitting one of the brothers in the thigh. He screamed and dropped, rolling in dust. Gunfire erupted like a thunderclap. The Uptons returned fire with fury, riddling the porch, splintering beams, shattering glass. Brady flanked wide through the garden rows, coming up behind the second brother, who was crouched behind the well. He took him down with a clean shot to the shoulder and then the knee. Non-lethal. Purposeful. He wanted one of them to crawl back. Only Silas remained, uninjured and enraged. He kicked his horse hard and made for the house, gun drawn, determined to end it where it hurt most. Brady ran hard, leapt onto the fence, and threw himself at the rider. They hit the ground hard, rolled, fists flying. Silas struck first, splitting Brady's brow with the butt of his revolver. Blood blurred Brady's vision, but he didn't stop. He tackled Silas again, slammed him against the water trough. "You think this ends with you?" Silas spat. "We own half this territory. You're nothing." A ghost with a borrowed name. Brady's voice came like gravel dragged across steel. Then it's time that ghost haunted someone back. He smashed Silas' hand against the trough, forcing the gun free. They wrestled in the dirt, grunting, fists slamming into bone and muscle. Silas was stronger, younger, but Brady had lived through worse, had earned every scar. He reached for the jagged piece of lantern glass nearby. Clara screamed his name just as Silas rolled him. Arm pressed his throat. Then, a sound, soft, out of place. A small voice. "Stop. Danny." He stood on the porch steps, tiny arms raised, wooden horse in one hand, trembling. "Don't hurt my pa." Time stopped. Silas blinked, startled. And that was enough. Brady twisted, drove his knee up, and flipped Silas off. He straddled him, grabbed the broken glass, and held it to his throat. Silas wheezed, eyes wide. "Go ahead. Kill me." Brady's arm tensed, then dropped. He stood up, chest heaving. "No, you ain't worth that." He looked down at Silas, bloodied and broken. "You tell every man you ride with every banker in your back pocket. They come for us again, I won't stop next time." Clara came to Brady's side, pressed a cloth to his bleeding head. He winced but didn't move. Behind them, Danny ran and wrapped his arms around Brady's waist. The man knelt and pulled him close, burying his face in the boy's hair. The three Upton brothers were tied and left by the main road with their weapons broken beside them and a note nailed to a fence post. "This land is ours. You want it, bring a war." By morning, word had spread through the valley like wildfire on prairie grass. Some folks whispered that Brady had returned from the dead. Others said a widow had raised a ghost to fight for her land. Didn't matter. No one challenged them after that. Weeks passed. Fences were mended. Crops took root. Danny started school in town. Clara wore her hair looser. Brady still checked the ridge each morning, but less like a hunted man, more like a sentinel watching over home. One quiet evening, Clara handed him a letter, wax-sealed and branded with the sheriff's mark. Brady opened it slow. He read it once. Then again. "Well," she asked. He folded it carefully. "Says my name's been cleared. Old Warrant's dead. Abilene's washed their hands of me." Clara didn't smile. "Not yet. So you're free." Brady looked toward the hills, golden in the dusk. "Reckon I've been free a while. Just didn't know it." She touched his hand. "And now?" He looked at her. At Danny, playing barefoot by the barn, laughter echoing across the field. "Now I reckon I stay." No one said anything more. There was no need. The land had chosen them as much as they had chosen it. Sometimes redemption don't come loud. Sometimes it comes quiet, with calloused hands, a child's laugh, and a woman's steady eyes. And for a man who'd spent years running, Brady finally found the one thing he'd never expected: a reason to stay.